You're listening to Missing Persons, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, DNA ID, Scene of the Crime, 3 Men and a Mystery, All Things Crime, and Zodiac Speaking. All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its creators, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss a missing persons case on this podcast, please be sure to visit missingpersonspodcast.net. This episode may contain unsettling or disturbing subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Missing Persons, a podcast dedicated to spreading the word about people who have vanished under mysterious or unexplained circumstances and the family members who are looking for answers. I'm Jess Betancourt.
And I'm Mike Morford. Together we created this podcast to help give a voice to people who continue to look for their missing loved ones. In some cases, even after decades have gone by. In each episode, you'll hear from Jess giving listeners the backstory and the basic facts of the disappearance.
Then Mike will speak with someone who's intimately connected to the missing person, and his guest will share their story with us.
Please stay tuned at the conclusion of this episode to hear about our Patreon program and our commitment to help find people who have gone missing. We'll also share with you where you can find more information and how you can join our team and help our efforts. You'll get recommendations for other podcasts we think you'll enjoy, and more.
So sit back and enjoy this episode, and who knows, maybe you can help us find someone who's missing. Episode 38, Diane Teresa Francis. Diane Teresa Francis was born July 7, 1968, in Somerville, New Jersey. Her parents were Rosalie Lamonto and David Leslie Francis Sr. Diane had 2 younger brothers, David Leslie Francis Jr. and Michael J. Francis. Rosalie and David Sr. divorced when Diane was 12 years old, and she and her brothers moved with their father a couple of times to Florida and then back to New Jersey. As a high schooler, Diane started to get into trouble. She got pregnant at 16 and lost the baby at 6 months. This was devastating for Diane, and perhaps was a reason that she suffered episodes of addictive and erratic behavior throughout her life. She went through several short-lived relationships until she met Charles Edward Snyder, who went by Chuck, in 1990 at a bar in Long Branch, New Jersey. The couple had 2 daughters together. Jessica was born on September 22, 1991, and Sherry, who is our guest today, was born on June 15 of 1993. Chuck, Diane, and the girls moved from New Jersey to Melbourne, Florida in 1994 and lived with Diane's dad, David Sr., and his wife, Rita Cook. But Diane and Chuck's relationship was troubled, and Diane started seeing other men on the side. According to her father, at this point in time, the mid-90s, Diane was in and out of rehab several times. Her daughters stayed with their grandfather or his family friends while Diane was unable to care for them. In 1995, Diane, Chuck, and their girls were living in a trailer park, and Diane met a man named John Schmidt. She and John took up together, and Diane ended things once and for all with Chuck, who moved back to New Jersey. John and Diane split up, and in 1997, she started dating a man named Daniel Irwin. Irwin was the manager of an apartment complex owned by the Boggs family, and Irwin had a friend named John Taylor Boggs, whose family owned the apartment building. Boggs finished up a 4-year stint in prison and was released, and immediately showed up at his family's apartment complex seeking to resume managing the place himself. And Boggs and Diane hit it off. Throughout all this time, Diane had had the girls taken away by the state of Florida and placed in foster care because she had numerous arrests and a drug habit. Boggs helped her win the kids back, and the 4 of them began living together. But Boggs wasn't good for Diane either. According to Sherry, Boggs and her mom did drugs together, and he was repeatedly physically abusive toward Diane. It was a cycle of drugs and abuse that resulted in Sherry and Jessica being removed from Diane's care for a second time. After this, there was an incident in which Diane might have tried to take her own life. She told a police officer who came to the house that she was suicidal after losing her girls. Diane left Boggs after the two had a big fight, and she left the house. She met a man named Roger Allen Foreman Sr. who offered her a ride. The two connected, and Diane moved in with Roger, and they married. With Roger's support, and after taking parenting classes, Diane earned supervised visits with the girls, and then was able to regain custody of them for a time. But on occasion, Boggs would turn up at the house, demanding to see Diane, and Roger would get angry. Diane's cycle of drugs and violence continued. In 2003, Sherry and Jessica were removed from Diane's care one final time. They were living in a trailer home in Melbourne when they were taken away by the Child Welfare Agency. The girls were shuffled around various foster homes. They never again lived with their mother, and spent the next years of their lives wondering where she was and not having the means to find her. Diane spent the next 2 years racking up numerous arrests and run-ins with the police. She was known to frequent the same establishments and motels in the Jacksonville area and had been arrested several times, both under the name Diane Teresa Francis and the name Kimberly Teresa Foreman. The last known sighting of Diane was when she was arrested for trespassing and drunken disorderly conduct on November 27, 2005. This was in a motel in Jacksonville. Police came and arrested her after she exhibited loud and drunken behavior and refused to comply with their demands to leave the premises. A man was with Diane at this point, one she told the police was her husband, but whoever he was, she was not using his last name. His name was kept out of the incident report at his request. Diane was released on the 28th and walked out of the police station, never to be seen again by her family. Jessica and Sherry managed to be reunited with their grandparents in 2008, at which time they were taken in by their aunt, Diane Francis. But no one in the family knew where Diane was, and they still don't. Sherry's grandfather told her that the last time he heard from his daughter Diane was in 2006, when she called him out of the blue and asked him to send her her birth certificate and some other paperwork. Diane said she wasn't doing very well and was very sick. That's the last anyone ever heard from her. And then, nearly a decade later, an odd twist. Diane's long-ago toxic boyfriend, John Boggs, called the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office in 2015 to report Diane missing. He told the responding deputy that he was Diane's ex, that the girls were his stepdaughters, and that he was worried because he hadn't seen or heard from Diane in 12 years. He gave a description of Diane to the deputy and reported that she had a drug habit. Sherry finds this phone call to be very suspicious. It came just one day after the disappearance of a neighbor of Boggs's on Apricot Avenue, a George Contos. His son, Aaron Thayer, reported him missing. George's car was found abandoned at a Palm Coast strip mall. Although Aaron offered a reward to help find his father, George Contos has never been found. Of course, there's no evidence that Boggs had anything to do with George's disappearance or Sherry's. But it's worth noting that Boggs has a very long rap sheet in Brevard County, including an arrest in May of 2004 for battery, domestic violence, and false imprisonment. He also had multiple drug charges, including selling cocaine in 2002 and 2003, an arrest for battery, domestic violence in September 2002, an arrest for disorderly conduct in 2000, more drug arrests in 1996, and lots of criminal traffic offenses. Sherry has worked very hard to find her mother, Diane. She paid to obtain all of Diane's old court and police records in Duval and Brevard counties, and for internet search companies to try to locate her mom. She contacted all her mother's old boyfriends and acquaintances. She tried to talk to her mom's best friend from the last time the girls lived with Diane, only to find that the friend had passed away. Sherry has entered Diane's information into NamUs as well, and has alerted the police in Melbourne, Palm Bay, and Jacksonville to her mother's continued missing persons status. The last known address she has been able to come up with is an Econo Lodge located at 5624 Cagle Road in Jacksonville, Florida. A private investigator Sherry hired came up empty. Diane Teresa Francis is a white woman with dyed blonde or brown hair, brown or hazel eyes, and she has a tattoo of a heart on her left calf and a tattoo of the letters JT on her right arm. Her ears are pierced. She has scars on both arms and on her face, and she has a space between her two upper front teeth where the teeth turn away from each other. She may go by her middle name Teresa or use the names Diane Teresa Foreman and or Kimberly Teresa Foreman. Mike Morford sat down with Sherry Snyder, Diane's daughter, to talk about her mother's case. That conversation is coming up after a word from our sponsors.
Hi, Sherry, and thanks for coming on Missing Persons to discuss your mom Diane's case with us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure, and it's our goal to help you spread the word that your mom's case is still unsolved and she's out there with no word as to where she is, so we're going to help you sort of in your quest. One thing, it has to be tough, I would assume, because your mom's been missing for quite a while. You know, depending on the reports, it varies from 2003 to 2005 to 2006, but it's obviously well over a decade. How hard has that been for you, not knowing where she is or what happened to her?
It's been pretty difficult. I did know my mom up until I was about 10 years old. So we did have somewhat of a relationship prior to her vanishing. So that, makes it kind of difficult because I do have those memories of being a young child with my mother. And then, going into foster care, I guess kind of made it, I don't want to say easier, but there was kind of that separation there for many years before I could actually start my journey of looking for her. And so I guess that kind of made it easier because I kind of took a step back. I was a child and grew into an adult and then started my journey. So I kind of had some time there to just, I don't know, build the want to do it over the years, if that makes any sense.
Sure. And it obviously, we talk about a lot of cases where people have struggled in their life. Your mom's no different. She had some struggles and sort of a ripple effect. They affected you. You wound up in foster care. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But it's also possible that some of the struggles she faced may have had some role or played some part in her disappearance. And before we jump into all that, can you just give us a little bit of an idea of what you do remember about that time with your mom before she went missing when you were together?
I will say, and I've mentioned this before in the past, it's when my mom was good, she was so good, and she was there. And I remember her being that mom that just doted on us and dressed us as twins. And, she did it all. And then when it was bad, it was very bad. And, I have to consider in my own heart and mind that she maybe had her own struggles that made her turn to those things. I'm not sure, but I do recognize that she kept going back and that there had to be a reason. I don't know anyone else that just delved in that lifestyle and then got out of it completely, got clean. She did the classes, she did the work to get us back when we would go into foster care. And so I know her heart was there and she loved us. She was definitely that mom. But like I said, when it took over her, it really took over her. And yeah, that she was a good mom when she could be. That's all I can really remember. I have, photos of it, so I know I'm not hallucinating it. But
do you remember when she started to have problems? And I assume we're talking about with drugs or alcohol or things along those lines?
I will say it was probably like the first occurrence was actually before I came along. I was born in 1993. So around the year 1985, my mom lost a baby with a man that she was madly in love with straight out of high school, I've heard. So this was the man she dated before my father. And they lost a child together, and he's since deceased. But I've heard that that's when, things really took a turn for the worse, I guess, is when she lost that child in 1985. She got better by the time she met my father, and then around the time I was born, 3 years later, so she met my father in 90, and then 3 years later, I was born in 93, it started again. So there would be some space and time in between these, bad periods in her life where she would get better, and she would try, to rearrange her life and make it the way it used to be. And then she would just go back. So
it was definitely a battle, it sounds like, for her.
Right. Like it was a battle of good and evil almost at times. Like she knew she needed to be good, but something just kept pulling her back there. I don't know if it was mental or, like I said, maybe she had her own things. I really don't know. I was just 10 when she disappeared, and she was about 34, I believe. So,
yeah. A lot of times those things are related to issues and traumas that people have experienced before, and it's a very common, in a lot of the cases. The timeline of what happened to your mom is a bit choppy. She's officially missing from Florida in a lot of reports in 2003, but she was also known to have been seen multiple times well after that. To start out, can you sort of walk us through how she came to get to Florida in the first place and where she originally started out?
Yes, and I will clarify the date. I just want to answer all of your questions here. She officially went missing 11/28/2005. She was arrested on 11/27/2005, and the next day she was released from jail. It was an overnight hold. I believe she was caught drunk and disorderly. So she was just kind of held overnight. You know how they do. They'll do a 24-hour hold if you're caught intoxicated in public. So that's what they did with her. And when she was released, she was never seen again. There is a phone call that is supposed. It's alleged. There's no proof of it, but it does come directly from her father, my grandfather, who I've known my whole life. And he claims that in 2006, my mother called from the same hotel she was arrested from in November of 2005. And she was asking for her birth certificate and social security card. She needed these important identification paperwork to move on, I assume, or something. She didn't say why she needed it. She just asked for it. She knew her father had it. I mean, I still contact my father if I need another copy of my birth certificate, so I kind of understand that. And he said he sent it to her, and then he claims that when he tried to call the hotel back, a week later, or whatever, what have you, it wasn't in service anymore. The hotel had closed down. So that's the clarification on that. The 2003 is just the last time I saw her physically. 2005 is the date she disappeared. In 2006, there's an alleged phone call. So that's why there's 3 different dates listed.
And that's why it's so important to have someone like yourself on to sort of walk us through all these different things that are reported.
Right. And also, we'll get to another thing. There's someone else that tried to report her missing in 2015 as well, and I'm sure you'll catch wind of that and see that. That was an ex-boyfriend of hers. So how she got to Florida, though, to answer your prior question, my mother spent most of her life in New Jersey. I've heard she was a normal child up until about 12 years old is what both of her parents say. And that's when they divorced for unknown reasons. And my grandfather got with another woman who was my mom's stepmother her whole life. They did not like each other at all. But she decided, I guess, at 12 years old, when her father moved to Florida, that she was going to come to Florida with him. Now, there is, I guess, at some point they go back to New Jersey. I don't have any record of that, and I don't have proof of it. I just know my grandfather told me they went back to Jersey because I was born in Jersey. So she had to have gone back to Jersey at some point. So she goes to Florida as a little girl, goes back to Jersey, and then again her father moves to Florida, and she goes with him. So then that's the final and last time my father goes at that time period too. That would have had to have been in 1994. So in 1994, she moves to Florida for good, as far as I know. She never goes back to Jersey.
What cities was she living in both New Jersey and Florida? Do you know?
Yes. So in Jersey, she lived in Somerville. I know she lived close to Denville, New Jersey, Long Branch, Morristown. And those I only know because I was born in Long Branch. My sister was born in Morristown. So obviously they had to live there at some point for us to be born at those local hospitals. And that's all I know of in Jersey. Now I have friends of hers that contact me all the time and tell me, little stories about her. And I could go through those messages and check to make sure none of them told me, another city she might have been in. But I'll get messages like, oh, yeah, your mom used to hang outside the Macy's at the mall in Denville, and we used to see her there all the time. So, I get new information randomly all the time. But it's kind of cool to have them, to let me know, because I wasn't there. And, I wasn't even thought of yet at that point, I guess. Okay, so Florida, when I was still in the picture with my mother, we lived in Melbourne, Florida, Palm Bay, Florida. I want to say Merritt Island, Florida. And I believe that's it. And then when she was on her own after 2003, she ventured to Jacksonville, Florida as well. And that's the last place she was seen, is Jacksonville, Florida, on that arrest.
In 2003, this is around the time where you're still living with her. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what was she working? What was going on in her life at that time?
So my mother usually picked up whatever trade her current boyfriend was doing at the time. She had quite a few boyfriends, mind you, in the Florida time period. So her last known boyfriend was a landscaper, and I remember going in his work van every day, and we'd go over the causeway to Merritt Island where these huge houses were, and my mom, her boyfriend, and her boyfriend's son would all get out and work on these houses, the landscaping, and I think even sprinklers and things like that. So like the water systems. And my sister and I, it was pretty cool. I actually like this time period. It's a good memory for me because all these people who own these homes would let us swim in their pool, and they would bring us lunch out while my mom and her boyfriend were working on the yard work. And so we kind of just got like the positive aspect of it all. They were out there working really hard, and we were out there drinking lemonade in the backyard in the pool while they worked. I don't know why that's a good memory for me, but I enjoyed it, I guess. Compared to what we were doing otherwise, it was pretty positive.
So the last time you see her is 2003. She leaves. How quickly, I guess, first off, I'm just asking on a personal level about you. Mm-hmm. Did you go into foster care right away? What happened there?
Yes. Jessica and I were removed 3 separate times legally by the state of Florida. I've heard rumor that there was maybe 1 or 2 times where my mom had to give us up voluntarily to her brother or her father. And I remember living in Texas with my grandfather as a little girl, and we were there to be kept safe from everything going on with my mom. And the last and final time, though, yes. And actually every time we were removed, we immediately went into foster care, whether that be that day, that night. It really just depends on whatever they have available at the time. And so in 2003, when we were removed, I believe we stayed on the office floor of our caseworker's office because there was nowhere for us to go. And then they put you in what's called like a respite home. And so that's like 1 or 2 days. And it's basically a transitioning home. And then what they do is contact local foster homes that have availability. Now, something that was really difficult for Jessica and I is I was kind of a troublemaker, and not in a bad way, but when they go to find these homes, it doesn't matter if you and your 5 siblings are standing there. If they can only find a home that the parents only want one child, you all are being separated. It doesn't matter. They have no obligation to keep you together. And so I refused. I would scream at the top of my lungs. I would hang on to poles. They were not separating me and my sister. I would not allow it. And it was like that until the very end. I mean, I refused because I know what can happen, especially with young girls, and I was not having it. It was not happening. So I made sure they kept us together. And so because of that, we ended up in weird positions where we'd be sleeping on the floor in the office or, like I just explained. But then after that, it's immediate. And I mean, we went through I don't know, the last time we went through 13 homes or something like that. Just because, when you're in that situation and you go into foster care, you are rebellious by nature because you've just been through all of this stuff and now they're throwing you in a home and they're like, these are your parents now. And you're like, no, they're not. I'm not, you know what I mean? So you just do everything you can to try and get back to your parents. And in hindsight now, I was making big mistakes and just being rebellious and making things hard on people when they were just trying to help. But at the time, you're like, if I cause enough mess in this place, maybe they'll just move me again and I'll end up back with my mom. So I just tried to get removed from every house that I ever went to pretty much at first.
Wow.
And yeah, so that's how that works. You go immediately, but it's kind of like a slow process. And like I said, it's dependent on availability. So
it seems like it was, I can't imagine being in that situation. It must have been tough on you and your sister.
I mean, it was tough, but I mean, the life we had prior to that, I think made us tough to begin with. So it was kind of like, here we go again. It wasn't really anything to us, I guess. It sounds really bad, but it's
sort of hard on you, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess you're in the foster care system, and then your mom goes missing officially later on for the last time after this, the last time she's arrested for this disorderly conduct or trespassing, whatever it was. She disappears the day after she gets out. At what point after that did you become aware my mom's missing and I want to know what happened? And did you start sort of wondering and asking questions and digging into it?
So I went into foster care for the last time in 2003, like we discussed. And then there's laws. So what it's called is termination of parental rights. When you go into the Florida foster care system and you're going in to age out, and they know you're going in until you're 18. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Then it's called TPR, which is termination of parental rights. That happened in 2003 for Jessica and I. So once that happens, there's laws put in place. You cannot have any contact with your biological family. You cannot contact the person you got taken away from. If there is any contact, law enforcement will have to intervene. You'll probably have to be moved further away to put more separation between you and the bio family. You cannot call them. You cannot have a Facebook. You cannot have social media. I mean, my school was spying on me. I went to a Christian school at this time. We were not allowed to have Facebooks. The dean of the school caught me on Facebook because I was looking for my family. And he pulled me into the office. I got expelled from school. So, and they removed the Facebook. They took it down. So I couldn't actually start looking until 2010. And so for 7 years, I had to sit there and just wait. And trust me, I had my days where I'd steal cell phones, and hide in closets and try to call my uncle and try to call my cousins. And I got in contact with my uncle, I think, one time, but mind you, they didn't know anything either. And they also were trying to protect themselves from getting in trouble, because had they told me something or given me any kind of information, it could have came back on them, and it was illegal. So I didn't start my official search until 2010.
And how old were you again in 2010?
Well, I'm 28 now, so I'm bad at math.
17 or so? 17, 18?
Yeah.
Okay,
so I was 17 years old. And actually, I guess I didn't start my searching then, but I found some of my family, if that makes any sense. So we had been in Broward County, which is 3 hours away from Brevard County, where my mom was like last seen, pretty much. Melbourne, Florida. We were put there to try and get away from our mother, I assume, by the Florida foster care system. And they were trying to adopt us out in Broward County, Fort Lauderdale. And so then I ran away. Remember I told you my rebellious self? So I ran away and was going to try and find my family again. And they caught me. I had to turn myself in. I had made it all the way back to my hometown, Melbourne. And so then they decided that because I wasn't doing well in the adoptive placement they had put us in, and that I was still running away, that they were going to move us back to where our case originated, in Brevard County. So they did. And they put us in an all-girls shelter. And I made like the best of friends there. I still talk to all these girls. They're like my sisters. I love them. So I was going to age out of the system in this shelter with all these girls, including my biological sister. And one night I just decided once again I was going to try and find my family. And I snuck out of my room in the middle of the night and stole a phone book from the office and hid underneath the desk with the house phone and just started looking for any names I could recognize, any names. So then I found this name, Rita Cook. And like, I didn't know why I recognized it or anything like that. I just was thinking I was going to call it. So I just like kept dialing it. I was so nervous. I didn't know who it was. So I call it and this little old lady answers. She's like, hello. It's like 2:00 in the morning. I'm like, hello, this is Sherry. And she's like, Sherry who? And I'm like, Sherry Lynn Snyder. And when I tell you she dropped the phone, I heard it like clank on the ground. And then I heard her scream my grandfather's name from across the house. It was my step-grandmother, the woman who married my grandfather, and my mom didn't like her stepmom. So yeah, I had found my family after 9 years, and then come to find out they lived right around the corner from the shelter we got put in. So we were having a yard sale the next day or something, and I said, hey, why don't you guys come? And they came. And it was my grandpa. It was surreal. It was a moment for me, definitely. I'm getting a little choked up thinking about it right now, but he had a keychain of me and my sister on, like, photos of me and my sister when we were little, still on his car keys. And it was just amazing. Like, we had found them, after years and years. And then come to find out they didn't know where she was. That was the story. They had cop friends look for her and they couldn't find her. And all in all, with my family, I really think they just are fed up, if that makes any sense. They've just gone through this with her for so long and have gone at it so hard, they just don't know what to do anymore. So like, it was
sort of like they're numb to it and they're just tired of it, basically.
Right.
Say, had she gone missing for stretches, like all through her adult life when she was dealing with this stuff?
I want to say yes and no, because like she would, but it would only be like for the 6 months she had to complete the classes in order to get us back. Like, it was never for good, if that makes any sense. She always came back. And I mean, when she voluntarily gave us to my uncle, her brother, and his wife, she would show up in the front lawn. And I remember her and my uncle getting in huge arguments because she'd say, give me my kids. I'm here to take my kids. And he would literally have to push her out of the front lawn and call the police because she would be trying to take us, and it wasn't legal. She wasn't done with her classes, but my point there is, like, she just always showed up, always tried, like, even if she wasn't all there in her mind, like, she knew in her heart and in her soul, like, she needed to do well for these kids and have these kids back. Like, it's just hard. It's like the good and evil thing again. You know, she knew she needed to do it, but there was this thing pulling her back and taking over her just constantly. So
you all this time, after you've started looking for your family, really hadn't heard from her, didn't know where she was, couldn't really provide you anything. How did you eventually learn and catch up with, where she was and find out about this trespassing, or disorderly conduct, whatever it was? How did all that come about that you found out about that?
Well, so for a couple years, I kind of gave my family the time to come out with whatever they might have. Mind you, I just mean, okay, so if you sent her the birth certificate and the Social Security card when she asked for it, what was that address you sent it to? Do you have that? Like, if she called you from this number in 2006, do you have that phone number? No? Like, my answers were just no all the time. Or one time, one of my family members told me I need to just let it go. And so I gave them a couple years, like I said, gave them the benefit of the doubt, because, mind you, I've done the work and I've been doing it for 11 years now. And there isn't a piece of paper I haven't printed that I found on my mom. And if I were them, that's how I would feel also. And I just didn't understand why they didn't have the proof of it. If you did the work and it was there, where's the proof of it? That was my opinion on it. So finally, after a couple of years of just letting them not tell me anything, because they weren't telling me anything, I was going to do it on my own. So I decided I was going to contact the Florida foster care system and get my case file. So that was the first thing I did, because those records do get destroyed after a while. And so I figured if I was going to have a copy of it, now would be the time. And so I think that was in, I want to say 2018 or 19, I did that. And they finally released a copy of that to me, which gave me a ton of information to begin with, just addresses to look. Mind you, so here's a difficult thing I faced. All the reports from the 1990s show addresses and Social Security numbers because that information was still legally, you were allowed to give it back then. Anything after 2000, I think, does not include any of that information. So that's when those laws went into place for privacy. And so I can't have anything that has pertinent information like that after 2000. There are a few of them that they're holding from me that they say I need to be there in person to receive. So I'm kind of curious about those. But then I went from there and just started searching in Clerk of Court's websites. I started contacting the emails for public records requests on all of the cities she was ever in and obtained police reports from each city. Then I contacted the Duval County Clerk of Court and also Sheriff's Office and Police Department looking for the same thing. Then I had the Duval County Sheriff's Office tell me that there was a report from 2015, but they couldn't tell me what it was about unless I could list one of the individuals in the report besides my mother. And so I said, okay, I really don't even know who, I have so many names in my head. I have her best friend, any boyfriend she's ever dated, her parents, her family. Like, who am I naming here? I don't understand. And so she said, well, I can give you the first name, and if you can give me a last name, I can read it to you. And she said the first name, and I immediately knew who it was and spitted out the last name. And she said, yes, that's it. And because it's someone I've suspected to have, maybe committed harm or something to my mother in the past. So anyways, she starts reading it to me, and basically saying that this ex-boyfriend of hers who dated her in 1999, that was the last time he saw her, called in 2015 to report her missing. The day after his neighbor goes missing.
Oh, his neighbor also went missing?
They're not related, I don't believe, but if you look at the reports and pull them up, the neighbor is May 11th, and he called on my mom May 10th or something like that. It was like one day apart. And I don't like it. I don't know that it has anything to do with one another, but I've always mentioned it because it gives me the EBGBs. I don't like it.
Sure, that's a very strange coincidence at the very least.
Yeah, and I've also since found a missing woman on his Facebook page too. So I'm the daughter of a missing person who's on his Facebook page. He has a daughter of another missing woman on his Facebook page. And when you click on this girl's page, her mom's flyers all over her Facebook. So that's how I found that. Again, just coincidence, but I don't like it. Doesn't sit right with me. So,
and this person too. Now his name's out there. I don't know if you.
Oh, it's out there.
Oh yeah. And it looks like that he's got a pretty extended record for false imprisonment, battery, drug charges, all kinds of stuff. So it's not a real high class type of person, it sounds like. And
I would, again, this is just he say, she say, but I would love for someone to say that I'm coming after him for slander ever, because I literally have physical reports of this man beating the living daylights out of my mother, and I was there. I remember it. So he can say whatever he wants to say. I was there. I jumped on that man's back and tried to get him off my mother. I remember ripping on his hair, and you just can't, you can't deny memories. And I have the reports now too. And I think that's why he's since disappeared from my life since COVID and all this has started. He will no longer answer me. He is not in jail and he is not deceased. So there's really no reason for him to be ignoring me other than he knows that I suspect something of him. And I just, in the report that I do have where he beat my mother senseless and the police had to show up, she denied it, of course, because she always did. With any boyfriend she ever had that was abusive, she always needed the place to stay. She had nowhere to go. So when they showed up to say, did he beat you? She'd say, oh, no, I'm fine. Everything's fine. And we'd stay. But this time, I think they arrested him because when they questioned him and they questioned my sister and I, we admitted it, yeah, he pushes their mom around and hits her and stuff like that. And they asked him and he said, well, I never made her bleed.
That's awful.
Yeah, that's that's a good way to defend yourself, I guess.
And was there any kind of proof or any link you found that he was with your mom or involved with your mom at the time that she got out of jail after that disorderly conduct thing, and then she disappeared? Was he with her at the time, or?
Not that I know of. The only thing I have the reports from those instances as well. I've spoken to the security officers that worked at that hotel during that time. There was a couple of them that actually had to physically detain her and mace her until police showed up because she was very combative. I'm assuming she was intoxicated. They don't remember her, supposedly. And she claims she had a husband, but the last name that she was using at that time was her last known boyfriend, not this boyfriend from 1999 that I'm speaking about now. So I really don't know, and I've asked him. I speak to him.
The other boyfriend, you mean, whose name she was using?
Yeah, and I mean, I speak to all of her boyfriends. I speak to her boyfriends from 1995. I mean, I've gone back to high school friends. I've tried everything, and it's just like everyone has the same old story. They were all doing the same stuff back then. They were all intoxicated. None of them remember. We don't know those people anymore. Oh, those people passed away. Oh, we haven't been over there in years. I get the same answers every time. And it's almost like I don't know if she expired the friend group she was using at that time to get by and maybe just moved on. But she does claim that there was a husband in the hotel room. Like, one of the reports says that the officer asked her to stand up off the bed. She was sitting on the bed up against the wall with a beer in her hand. He asked her to stand up. She said no, or something like that. And long story short, they ended up having to put her like face down on the bed, apprehend her or whatever. But beforehand, it says she reached out for her husband. So there was a guy sitting there. He asked to not be listed in the report. And I've never been able to connect any of her boyfriends back to Jacksonville. None of them. It was just her that went there.
So this person that is known to be with her around this time, you haven't been able to identify him?
No.
That's got to be very frustrating.
Not be listed. Yeah, it is. And no one remembering them, I mean, I thought for sure contacting the security officer was going to be like, oh, he's going to know because he maced her and she's only like 90 pounds. And then when he asked her if she wanted medical care, she said, no, thanks. Like, I would remember that. I don't know, just like this little woman, and I have to mace and detain her. How many times did that happen in your career that you don't remember?
Yeah, it sounds like something that wouldn't happen on a regular basis.
Right. I mean, maybe I don't know Jacksonville, and I don't know that hotel. I've heard it's bad, but it's since changed to an Econo Lodge. So it was a Ramada Inn on Cagle Road in Jacksonville, and now it's an Econo Lodge. And like I was telling my previous private investigator, they literally just hung a sign over it. They didn't change anything. Like, you can go into the Google Photos, and it's the same dirty carpet, it's the same beds, it's the same exact hotel. They just draped an Econo Lodge tarp over the Ramada sign. So I don't know why they did that or why they had to, but the officer also said that he hasn't been in that area at that hotel since 05-06, when I guess some stuff happened at the hotel. So I'm assuming it closed down.
Huh. And I just wanted to ask one thing before we move on and I forget. So this person that you suspect might have had some kind of involvement, he reports your mom missing in 2015. Did he explain why he did that, or suddenly all these years later came forward and made that report?
Well, I have the report on Google Drive, I think. I don't know. But literally it just says something like, I haven't seen Diane in 12 years, which is incorrect. Because in, 12 years prior to 2015 is what? 2003? Because he didn't see her in 2003. The last time he saw her was 1999. So that was a bull-faced lie. So he calls in and he says, the last time I saw her was 12 years ago. She was a friend of mine, and I'm really worried about her. And then he goes on to say that he was the stepfather of her children. So is she your friend, or are you her ex-husband? Because those are two completely different things. Never understood that. And then he says, the last he heard, she was in Jacksonville. And that's why he knew to call Jacksonville. Because I asked him about that. Mind you, I've spoken to him as well. We spoke for like a year before he stopped talking to me and vanished. He would just say the most odd things. And, I remember the person he was, and he was a creepy individual to begin with. But speaking to him, it was different. It was like he was just calling my phone and stuff to see what I knew. Or, I don't know, I just got very bad vibes from him, and I've always had really good gut feelings. So when my stomach was turning and I was speaking to him, I was like, I'm not letting this go. I can't. So he never really explained why. He just said that he was worried about her and that he was the stepfather of her kids. And last he heard, she was in Jacksonville. He never even really said, why he was calling them, why he didn't try to reach out to her family first. Like, I don't know about you, but if I had a boyfriend 16 years ago and I just got an idea in my head that I was just going to call a police station, like, no, that would never happen. I would never do that. I would first try to get on Facebook and be like, maybe I could reach out to his friends or like someone that he knows to see if they know where he's at. You know, I wouldn't just immediately call the police station, and that's what he did. And yeah, I can't deny that it's weird. That's all I can say.
Sure. And after that last time she was known to be seen, she disappeared the day after getting out of jail. Is that where the trail sort of goes cold at that point?
Yes. So, I don't know, about 5 years ago or so, maybe less than that, I was on a police website, I think the Duval inmate search site or something like that. And it's this page, you pull it up and there's already this thing selected in the top left. And it's like search for only inmates in jail or something like that. And so I deselected that so that it would search, you know, released and current inmates. And I had found a jail number on a Duval report or something like that, a JSO ID. And so I decided to just search that, just the JSO ID, and see what would come up. And 2 different people came up. They're both my mother. One's a Diane Teresa Francis, and one's a Kimberly Teresa Foreman. Both of those people frequented Jacksonville in 2004 and 2005, and they arrested her on both of those identities, knowing it was her. And they allowed her to enter jail on both names. Her fingerprint is also connected to both of those. So found that just like randomly, and those are the last reports. Those on Kimberly Teresa Foreman and Diane Teresa Francis in Duval County, Jacksonville, Florida. That's where it ends. There's 2 identities there and then just nothing. And it's not like I haven't searched the outskirts of that area through and through on all clerk of court websites and all jail websites. I've tried, you know, thinking, maybe she went over here a little bit, or maybe she went this way, and nothing. So unless she went straight from there out of country, I have no idea. You know, that's it. That's where it ends right there.
So it's sort of like the paper trail stops, but also any mention of anyone knowing or having interactions with her, there's nothing on that along those lines after that either.
Right. And, you know, I found her, so she had a best friend around the time she disappeared, or like around the time we knew her last. She passed away, I think, in 2014 or 2013. And I found that out in 2017, I think. So I was too late to speak to her. But I did speak to her children. She has 4 kids. And they were around when all this happened, and they were also taken away for good. They never saw their mom again. And so I guess they had arranged visits with her or something like that. So they never got to live with her, but they did see her, and she got cancer and passed. But when I spoke to them, they said my mom was nowhere around when they saw Melinda. So Melinda being her best friend, not being around, her going to Jacksonville, none of her other ex-boyfriends seeing her, her parents haven't talked to her, her brothers haven't talked to her, her daughters haven't talked to her. I mean, yeah, it's just like she disappeared off the face of the earth. And I will add that my mother, she might not have been, you know, the best person in the world. She wasn't the worst person in the world, but she did commit crimes, whether it be just little, you know, she had a petty check fraud or something like that on one because she tried to catch a check that bounced and it wasn't even hers or something like that. So just year after year after year after year after year, though, she commits these little crimes, you know, 1996, 1997, 1998, 9, 10, you know, she just keeps going, and then all of a sudden it stops. To me, that doesn't happen unless you had a life-changing, you know, you found God in that moment and just decided you were going to change your life around and just become completely different. I don't see why that would be the case unless she something happened to her.
Sure. And I know that you've gone as far as entering your mom into NamUs and submitting DNA for comparison purposes and stuff. Tell us a little bit about that process and deciding to do that.
So, I think it was June 15th, 2019, I want to say, because it was my birthday. One of my family members, again, had told me, well, what if she doesn't want to be found? And I said, okay, that's fine. If she doesn't want to be found, that's totally okay. But what I need them to understand, and my mom and anyone else that's doing this, is if you have a family member and you think they don't want to be found, it's not just up to them. This situation is something that me and my sister will deal with forever if we don't find answers. This is on us too, so I decided that if that's the case, at least I'll enter my DNA. So if she passes, I'll know. And that sounds so bad, but even that would be better than nothing. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's just like, I'd rather have that call than be like, we found your mom, we have her remains, now you can, bury her, put her to rest. I'd be better with that than not knowing every day.
Yeah, the not knowing from everyone I talk to is usually worse than, finding out someone has died, and at least you can have some kind of finale, some kind of closure. But with this, it just seems to go on and on and on because you just don't have any outcome.
Right. And so that was kind of like, a side note for me kind of thing. Like, if this is the case, at least I've done what I could. If she is deceased, at least I know that I did my part in putting my DNA there so it could be linked up. And also because, like I said before, it isn't just up to her. This involves so many other people, and it is ruining lives. Maybe not so much directly mine, but I witness a lot of lives that it is ruining. And so to find those answers, it's just very important. And, maybe not the answers I'm looking for, but that's okay. At least it's something like.
Sure. You have some type of outcome. And I think you hit the nail right on the head, because this is affecting not only you, but, your children won't know their grandmother or know that part of their lives. So I think it sort of has those ripple effects where it goes on. And
I dread the day my kid is old enough to look at me and be like, well, where's your mom? Like, I don't want to answer that question.
Sure.
Not now anyway. I want to have answers for him, and my sister's kids as well. So. And
I guess the toughest question is, do you think she's alive, or do you hold out hope that she's alive?
I want to say no, but I don't want it to sound horrible. I don't want to hold out hope that my mom may have just moved on and just started a whole new life and doesn't, I don't see that being probable. I don't see it being possible, but of course I hope that for her, by all means, if that's what you wanted for your life, cool. But let us know. That's where I stand, if that's what you wanted for your life, great. If you have new kids, if you have a husband, if you've moved out of the country, great. But just let us over here know that are spending our whole lives looking for you.
Yeah, that's got to be a tough situation. I couldn't imagine myself being in your shoes.
Yeah, I just try and think of it like it's just made me the person I am. I can do the things that I do because of the stuff I've been through. And if I hadn't, I don't know if I'd have the brain power that I have now to be able to, investigate all this. And
it sounds like you've definitely done everything you can think of. You mentioned, you're doing the NamUs thing, you're backtracking all these records, you're checking for arrest. You mentioned having a private investigator. I don't think that anyone could fault you if you don't find the answers you're looking for, because I don't think there's anything else you could have done.
Yeah, I had my aunt. I love her to death. She's been there. It's the aunt that took us when, we were little, and she's actually the aunt that took us out of the shelter when I was 17. So when I had my grandparents come to the shelter, they contacted my aunt. She came and got us out of the shelter. So same aunt. She lives right down the road from me here in Arizona. She's followed me my whole life, protected me my whole life, helped me my whole life. She was there when my son was born. She was there for major surgery last year. Like, she's my mom, basically. She's my live-in mother. And she tells me all the time, if anything else, you've done every single thing you can. Everyone else has given up. Everyone else has walked away, and you're just still there doing it. So she's very supportive. She can't directly help, but she does what she can, and she tells me the same thing. You've done everything you can. I'm like, I know. Of course you feel like you could always do more, because it's your mom. Like, that's my mother. She's the person who brought me here. So
yeah,
to not know where she is.
I just can't imagine. And again, I think your story is just very inspiring, because I know someone out there listening that's going to hear this is going to be in some kind of similar position and probably feel like no one understands what I'm going through, and I don't know what to do. I don't have any answers. I think everything you've talked about and your entire journey to try and find your mom one way or the other, to find out what happened to her, I think is just very admirable. And I hope that the stuff you've said is going to help someone else out there.
Yeah, I do too. I did want to mention about the police report too, because I was just thinking about it. I never answered that question. So how I did that, just for anyone out there that's trying to get a police report on someone in Florida, so there's requirements in Florida. When I called over and over again to all these police departments, and they wouldn't take it, because in Florida you have to be taken against your will, victim of a medical condition or something like that, or under the age of 26. There's like requirements, and my mom didn't meet any of those. And so they laughed at me. They wouldn't take it. They said, do you have an address we can go and check? And I said, from when? 2003? It's 2020. Like, you're not going to find her there. She's not going to be there. And they said, well, ma'am, that's all we can do. You can give us an address and we can go check. And so I gave them the last address she listed. And of course she wasn't there. It was some confused family who had no idea why the police were at their front door. And I just felt like a fool. They laughed at me. I was like hysterical. And so finally someone, Facebook being the devil and angel that it is, someone on Facebook contacted me. They were like involved in cadaver dogs and things like that. And they said, I know that this isn't related, but there's this Jane Doe in West Palm Beach and she matches your mom. Why don't you call up there and just see if they'll take it? And I called and they took it. West Palm Beach took my mom's case because she matched a Jane Doe in West Palm Beach. And that's how I got my DNA in Namas. And for like a year, I called these police departments with them laughing at me. And my best advice is just keep trying. Just don't give up. Don't be discouraged, because there's always a way,
Yeah. Well, I hope somehow that you do get some kind of answers and find out the truth about what happened. Do you have any kind of social media presence or a website where anyone listening, if they have questions or suggestions or anything like that they can reach you at?
Yes. So on any platform, it's going to be Finding Diane Francis, and you'll know it's the first page that comes up. I mean, if you just search that on Google, all of my social media comes right there in the images results. And you can just click on any of them. The Twitter's Finding Diane Francis, Instagram Finding Diane Francis, Facebook. And also my page that I have for her on Facebook is Finding Diane Francis as well. So.
Well, I hope people will, if they have questions or they have hopefully information, they can contact you and maybe provide you with details. Or if they're going through a similar situation, maybe they can ask you for some advice. Because I think from everything we've talked about, you're someone that could definitely help them maybe if they're going through something similar.
Yes, please reach out. I mean, I've been sitting here on my case for 11 years, so all I can really do is help other people until something comes up on mine. So.
Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on to discuss your mom's case, and, I do hope that you do have some kind of success, get some kind of answers, and we're going to do our part to help spread the word and get this out to more people so they know that your mom's still out there and you're not giving up hope on finding out what happened to her.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Missing Persons. If you can provide any information to help solve the case we discussed in this episode, we hope that you'll contact the appropriate authorities.
We hope that you'll tell your friends about Missing Persons and invite them to listen to the show. Word of mouth will really help us grow. And if you'd like to help us reach new listeners, please be sure to rate and review Missing Persons on the platform you're listening to us now on.
We'd like to tell you a little bit about our Patreon program. If you visit patreon.com/missingpodcast, you can sign up to help this podcast through ongoing monthly support. As a thank you, we'll give you an on-air shout-out, a thank you card and sticker, plus you'll get ad-free early access to every new episode of Missing Persons, as well as any bonus content.
Your Patreon support also goes directly towards helping the missing, because every dollar that we earn through Patreon will be split with charlieproject.org. Your Patreon support will really go a long way towards helping. We hope you'll consider supporting the show. Just a reminder, new episodes of Missing Persons drop every other Saturday. If you want to find us on social media, you can search Facebook for Missing Persons Podcast. We're also on Twitter with the handle @missing_pod. And of course, you can always find us on our website, missingpersonspodcast.net. As we wrap up this episode, Jess and I would like to play a preview for you for a true crime podcast called True Crime Buzz. Be sure to give it a listen. On behalf of Jess Betancourt, this is Mike Morford saying thanks, and we'll see you next time on Missing Persons.
Hi, I'm Brittany.
And I'm Amber.
And we're the hosts of True Crime Buzz.
We believe there's nothing better than a good glass of wine.
Or Diet Coke.
And true crime.
So buckle up and get ready, y'all.
Because each week we like to pour a glass
and discuss the most insane true crime stories ever.
That's right. Murders, missing persons, cults, we cover it all.
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Spotify.
With new episodes every Tuesday.
So grab a drink and join us.
Cheers!
Missing Persons is produced under the name AbJack Entertainment by Mike Morford and Jessica Betancourt. It's hosted by Mike Morford and Jessica Betancourt, with writing and research by Jessica Betancourt and editing by Mike Morford. Be sure to listen every other Saturday for an all-new episode of Missing Persons.